Welcome to the Workplace Ninja Netherlands podcast, a series on Microsoft's modern workplace management.
So, welcome at a new Workplace Ninja series, podcast series. Joost, we had an interview together and then we said to each other, let's make some new podcast material regarding a new series, a new workplace series.
Yeah.
What were the thoughts about that? Do you know?
We wanted to create some content for everybody regarding Microsoft Intune and everything around it. Help each other out to get in touch and make some noise about Intune in itself, and help people to create nice Intune environments.
So we will help people to start and to give all the information that is needed to realize a new modern workplace. If you have a hybrid or an on-prem, we will guide you to the new things of the modern workplace. That was basically what we want to do.
That's something we're going to try.
Yeah. So, and today we're starting with an introduction of.
Yes. First of all, what we're going to do in a couple of podcasts, and most of all, the introduction of Intune itself.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff do we have? We've got something with NDM. We've got something hybrid, config manager maybe, local environments, hybrid environments, and everything around it. And so, what is MDM?
So let's see what we can realize in the next few podcasts. But first, we have a few people on the table. Joost, you're already you're already speaking. But who are you?
Yeah, Joost Glijsteen, solution lead, workplace, everything, doing consultancy around Intune since October, an MVP. And that's basically my introduction.
And on the other end of the table, we have two other guys, also part of the Workplace Ninja Netherlands team. Kenneth?
Yeah, hello. My name is Kenneth van Zurksem. I'm a modern workplace consultant working at IT Creation. I'm also an MVP nowadays, both in endpoint management and security. And love to speak about these topics at events and in podcasts nowadays. Yeah.
Still, we try to do that. So if you have feedback on other things that we do, please reach out to us. The next one on the table, also member of the Workplace Ninja team, Peter.
Yeah, Peter Ramans, also an enterprise mobility MVP and nowadays also security. In my daily job, I help customers with modernizing their workplaces as a, what is it called? Modern workplace consultant, architect.
Give it a name.
But just having fun with workplace.
Yeah, everyone on the table is doing stuff with the workplace. And my name, Frans Houdendorp, and also together with Joost, I was awarded as an MVP, but Joost in enterprise mobility, and I in the security category. So I think important people on the table, everyone is an MVP. And maybe we can help each other, but or you as a listener can learn from us. We will try to do. And I am active in the security space, helping customers securing their environments, mainly on workplace. So I think enough knowledge on the table to fill in this new podcast series. Okay, let's start. I think it's good to have a little bit of an introduction of what is mobile device management. Probably see what we can do with modern device management. Joost, what are your thoughts about that?
You can approach it in different ways. Our main focus in our office is trying to get a corporate device into our environments. The first step we have to give is, what is MDM? Maybe Kenneth can tell us what is, in the basics, MDM, and what are your thoughts about it?
Well, to give a bit more insight about that, and of course that is my opinion, but in the past we used to manage devices by installing agents on the device itself, and that actually changed with the MDM way of managing devices, where we actually see that the capability of remote managing the device is actually built into the device itself. So that actually started out with mobile devices. We all know the Blackberries, which were built to be able to be managed remotely. But even nowadays, Windows 10 and 11, it even started with Windows 8, were considered a mobile or an operating system which could be managed with a mobile device management solution.
Yeah, and mobile device management, as you said, it's not only limited to mobile devices, but also nowadays Windows devices, but also Mac and Linux. Is that extending, Peter, a little bit in the near future? So is Microsoft investing in making more workplaces adding to Intune or the mobile device management area?
Besides Windows, iOS, macOS, and Android, we see movement in the Linux space. Also Chrome OS, so you can connect your Intune infrastructure up with Google's workplace management systems, and then you have one single pane of glass to manage also those devices via MDM. So you can remote wipe a Google Chrome OS device from your Intune admin center.
So from an educational perspective, in education, there are a lot of use of Chrome OS, for example.
Exactly. Yep.
So there is a movement so that we can manage that from a Microsoft perspective as well.
Yep.
It's good to know. Are there any thoughts, any other things to mention, Joost?
Yeah, it's good to have the good talk with the customers and everybody around it. What are your first steps you're going to proceed with? Are you going to bring your own devices? Are you going to opt the simple Windows devices? And how do you going to approach it? That's are some of the basic steps we want to see and talk about. And what are the devices you are seeing in your environments? Is it only Windows or is it Mac OS as well? And how do you going to proceed with security and everything around it?
Yeah, and it's easy to, when you are a new company and you're enrolling your new tenant, and then it's more or less easy to enable that devices, that Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices, Mac OS, making some policies and so on. But what if I have a current environment, probably a large environment of thousands of devices? What is the approach, or what are the things that we need to enable or integrate the new modern workplace in that areas? Probably Kenneth.
Yeah, well, what we see, and that's something that I see regularly, is that if you look at an existing environment, that environment has been built up starting with a small proof of concept, and that proof of concept within no time has actually been extended towards what we nowadays call a production environment. And that basically means that even that some settings are not well thought of, to say so, and especially in an existing environment, going back to a consistent set of security settings is actually quite complicated, because one way or the other there will always be impact for the organization. So if you have an open environment and if you create a default tenant within Microsoft, that environment is quite open, and you want to go back to a controlled environment again, it's not something that you can do overnight, and you have to make an approach on how you are going to get there step by step. And that is actually the discussion that we are having with our customers. what do you want to protect in that environment? Is the company data, do you want that to be protected? How do we protect the identities to make sure that nobody else can log in with an account from your environment? All kinds of stuff. And that is, of course, where the whole Intune, Microsoft Endpoint Manager and the conditional access, etc. comes in. And yeah, that's our daily job. So that actually tells us that there's a lot of work to do there on that front.
Yeah, and Joost, if I have as a customer, I have local file shares and so on. What is the approach if I want to introduce the modern workplace based on cloud management and so on? If I have local stuff like file shares, applications, and so on, what is the approach at that moment?
First of all, you have to think about what's your current situation. Do you already use Config Manager or anything like it? But that's going to be a topic we're going to approach later. Next step is how is your environment being set up? But most of the time we can do something with Cloud Sync and with the connection to the environment within Windows Hello for Business.
Yeah, Cloud Sync. There are two things. One I will ask Peter in a few seconds. But first, to enable our identities, we need to first set up Azure AD Connect, for example, to have our identities in a hybrid situation in the cloud. And with Azure AD Connect, we can also sync devices, hybrid devices into Azure AD. What is the benefit for that? Why do we need that?
The identities in our environments
the hybrid devices and the identities.
Yeah. Then the connection to your local environment is already there. So because of your hybrid environment, you have connection. But mostly what we see right now is hybrid is not being going forward in any time for our environments, but we're going to approach it only in a cloud way because of all the possibilities nowadays to connect to the local environment with Cloud Sync and everything around it. So hybrid isn't the case in our situation, but if you have it, your device is already being seen in the local AD, and that's why we can connect in easier ways to the environment like a file server.
Yeah, probably we will dive in a little bit deeper in one of the next recordings. But Kenneth, if I'm new, I have complete on-prem environment. I will set up Azure AD Connect, but there are several ways within Azure AD Connect at the moment because there's also the Cloud Sync option.
Indeed, yeah. What we see happening now is that in the first time we had to actually install components in our on-premises environment to make the sync of the identities or the devices possible towards Azure AD. What we actually see happening now, and that's actually in a similar approach to all the other proxy agents that you have, that you can now just simply install a proxy agent and actually have the configuration itself coming from the Azure AD environment. Yeah. So allowing you to synchronize users. Is that feature on par with what Azure AD Connect can do today? I don't think so. But will it be feasible for some customers? I think so as well. And I do believe that in the future, of course, that feature parity will be one-on-one. So you don't need to install any complex infrastructure within your on-premises environment anymore.
Yeah, and also from a license perspective, SQL licenses and that sort of thing.
Indeed.
That sort of things are not necessary anymore.
It's a single point of failure because you can only you can have a second one in
but not active.
Not active. So there are many reasons to have this as a cloud solution available within your environment.
Yeah. So we have an on-prem environment. I have set up Azure AD Connect, so we have synchronized users and devices if necessary. But I have Config Manager as my local configuration manager option to manage my devices, Peter. What options do we have within Config Manager to extend to cloud usage, modern workplace, and so on?
Yeah, you have different options. First of all, Cloud Attach, which allows you to synchronize your devices which are residing in your Config Manager environment towards Intune. And then you can use the Intune Admin Center to remotely manage those devices from the Intune admin center without needing to go into your config manager environment. Then you have also co-management, and co-management can be used to switch over workloads. For instance, your application deployment, switched it over to Intune, and then slightly move over all your packages from config manager to Intune.
Yeah, so as an organization, you have the possibility to move some workloads one by one.
Yep.
So it can be managed from cloud instead of config manager, but config manager will host also configuration like that. So it will accept that sort of configurations in the cloud.
Yep. True.
Do we have other things?
But I think we passed a little bit about the questions why modern management. I think that's a really important question to ask also our customers. Why do you want modern management? We want to consume the cloud maybe, but also the world is moving very fast. So those product life cycles are monthly often, or maybe bi-yearly, depending on what product. But so we need to move fast, also on security.
And that's when looking at on-prem software like config manager, then that's the challenge.
Yeah, that's a challenge, and I think config manager in the last 5, 6, 7 years they moved to a sort of cloud model by shipping every month a technical preview, twice a year, and a full feature proof version. So they already moved that way, but Intune is going even faster, and M365 also, Defender for Endpoint also.
And they can add new functionality on top of current situations.
Exactly.
What do customers not have impact? And if you have additional features on an on-prem installation like config manager, then you need also always install an update, and that can be challenging because if something is falling the other way around, then we have an issue with probably other features.
True, and moving towards modern management doesn't mean that it's getting simpler for us or IT pros or people managing desktops, because things can break. Also, we have seen that in the recent past. But on the other hand, you don't need to maintain a complex infrastructure also. So it goes two ways.
Did you see a larger move to the modern endpoint within the COVID situation?
Yeah. But I think the first main, how do you say that? Subject or focus was on Teams and getting everybody productive on their existing devices, and then very quick afterwards modernizing, or at least cloud manage the Windows devices.
Yeah, we did see a large move of the on-premise environments to the modern workplace.
Yep.
It was much better to cope with the situation we had. The larger healthcare environments were struggling how to approach it everything. So we had a lot of larger projects at the same time to get those onboarded to the Intune environments, and much more easier steps to go to.
Yep.
When looking at config manager, there are a few items extending possibilities within config manager to move to modern management. What about if I have the choice? I have an on-prem environment. I'm moving into cloud management. Should you advise go cloud only, or go for a hybrid situation with config manager go management, for example? What are the choices that we have to consider in that particular area?
it's depending on the customer. I think we have a lot of complex, large applications and packages. Then it might be that you want to keep those on Config Manager. If you have a lot of disconnected sites across the world where people doesn't really have a good internet connection, and you have a local distribution point over there to get your packages, then that's Config Manager is a good fit. And maybe a co-managed environment can be a good fit. That's the reason why I said because you always need to ask the customer why do you want modern? Modern is a buzzword.
Yeah.
Of course,
absolutely.
We can modernize our management. If you look back in the past, GPOs versus MDM. MDM is more modern, but it doesn't really is also applicable for every customer.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. It depends on the customer's environment.
Yeah.
But you are saying and targeting a few points based on the application landscape, based on what do you want. Are there any things to consider, Kenneth?
Well, as Peter mentioned, I think that in the end, the application landscape and the infrastructure that you have to host those applications will actually determine what way to go. So if you are a company and most of your applications are already SaaS-based, then the move towards modern is much more easier than if you have a company with very specific client-server hosted applications which will not be updated by the suppliers in the near future. That requires a whole other infrastructure to host that.
Yeah,
and it also depends on whether you are already centralizing those applications to environments like RDS or VDI, etc., or that you have that all installed locally, high dependency on network latency, etc. So all those kinds of things, they pop up in an inventory, and based on that you can actually create a best fit infrastructure. But as Pete already mentioned, having a best fit infrastructure also involves making sure that we can move forward as applications evolve in the future. Meaning that you can start out with Config Manager because you have many applications, but mainly due to things like co-management, etc., where you can easily transition workloads towards Intune in the end. But don't get me wrong, I think that especially when it comes to managing applications, that's a Config Manager thing. That's really, we have been doing that with Config Manager for more than 20 years now. And that's not the purpose of Intune. Intune, I see it as we of course can install applications, but don't go installing 700 applications with Intune during your autopilot enrollment. And I have seen customers trying to accomplish that. So
but
only replacing the tooling, but not wanting to
change the processes.
Change processes, but also the way of working. And and then it breaks, and then we fly in, and we need to convince customers that things need to be. There's another way of thinking when it comes to modern management. So that it's another concept of how you make a workplace and how you host it for your customers.
Yeah, and what you say is if you have a lot of hundreds of local applications, then hybrid is probably the good way, or stay local, because if you have a local environment and client-server applications that needs to connect to a SQL backend, for example, and that sort of thing, that is not modern. And not modern in the way, it could be modern, but not modern in the way that we manage within an Intune environment, for example.
But also if you have complex OS deployment situations where you have a device that needs to be up and running within the hour with all the packages and everything on top of it.
Please keep using Config Manager.
With Autopilot, that's a real challenge.
I've one of my customers at an education environment where for exams and for other things, you need to enroll a machine, and that must be there within a few hours probably. And then they are still using Config Manager, and it's doing this job very good. When we try to move that into modern management with Intune, then it can, but there are challenges.
I think for these concepts, some terminology was created, and the terminology is that the way that we used to do it for the last 20 years is called legacy nowadays, and the way that we should be doing it is called modern. But that doesn't really reflect the story that we are talking about, because what you are going to implement really depends on many factors, and I don't consider what's being considered legacy today as being a legacy environment, because that's not the case. But it tends to make people think about we need to get rid of legacy and go modern only. But if you're not ready for it, please keep using the techniques that we have been using for the last 20 years, because they have proven themselves to be effective, and they are still working.
Yeah, and not only still working, because also in Config Manager, there is still a lot of investment from the Microsoft side. Yep. So it won't disappear in the next few months.
No, and that was. This is a little bit created by Microsoft themselves. Like 5 years ago, they said, Config Manager is a bridge, and we are investing everything in Intune. But a lot of customers complained because they thought Config Manager is dead. No, it's not dead. At least not for the next foreseeable future, because a lot of really big customers, mainly in the US, are really relying on Config Manager.
But on the other hand, if you're a small company with a few tens of users and you have only cloud applications, then it's a perfect fit to go into modern management.
They even have a nice word for that. That's cloud-born companies. Companies which started in the area of cloud and which don't have any necessity anymore to install servers and client-server applications. And for those companies, this is actually the perfect fit. And of course, we have hybrid options as well. But really looking at if you are like an architect or a consultant, you really have to look at the environment. And based on the environment, the outcome of what you are going to consult can be different.
Yeah. We have a few other things, but what is the biggest challenge if a company wants to move? What is the biggest challenge for a company to accomplish?
Yeah, it's been said already. It's the applications in many ways, because files can be moved to SharePoint, Teams, or anything like it. Home folders can be moved to OneDrive, so those aren't the difficult ones. But what we see is applications, the legacy applications, are some difficulties, but you have to check what your workloads are, check which applications you have, which applications can be installed on a different way. Azure Application Proxy is in some ways very helpful. And what we see, keep your VDI environments until all your workload is to the other environment, and give your cloud PCs, your Intune devices, give it the modern way and use those legacy applications into the VDI environment.
Yeah. Don't you see also with group policies, getting rid of rethinking the security of the workplace? I see that a lot of customers using group policies for the past 20 years and created a huge list of group policies with a lot of group policy preferences and registry tweaks, files that are being moved as part of the, security baseline, and trying to transform that to Intune and help the customers rethinking their security.
To add to that, I don't think that as a consultant necessarily I like the approach that Microsoft is taking by now allowing you to import all the ADMX files into Intune and just turning on those same group policies again, because I do agree with you, Peter, that moving towards modern requires you to also rethink a lot of concepts that you have created in the last 20 years. And for me personally, I think that's the biggest challenge that companies are facing, that they have to unlearn, and that is the most difficult thing to do, what they have been doing in the last 20 years, and rethink about how to approach towards the future. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do, because I had to do that myself as well. And once you learn how to unlearn, you can actually see with a fresh look on what the future is bringing.
Check. That is more or less the basics, the concepts of what modern management is, what Intune does, what we're doing with Active Directory, with Azure Active Directory, with Config Manager. One thing I want to add before we closing out this recording. Nowadays, in new modern environments, we still see a lot of new devices popping up, like Internet of Things, IoT devices, because we are here in an office and we have sensors in the building that see us coming in.
Oh no!
Yeah, probably. But what are we going to do with that sort of sensors? Is that also part of a modern management strategy for customers, Kenneth?
In the end, it is. Because they actually extend your way of working and provide signals in order to do your work. So in my opinion, they belong to what we call modern workplace. And we see it in operational technology, but also Internet of Things kind of stuff. But so it's actually part of that. And we need to incorporate them in our way of thinking, at least. Mainly nowadays we see it with security, of course, where we also want to discover those devices on our networks and see what kind of vulnerabilities are lying around. But it also has to do with making sure that you have a good inventory of how your environment looks.
Yeah, maybe Joost, it is good to have. We have made a planning for the next few recordings, so we will address that in a few seconds. Maybe it's good to have this sort of discussions with IoT also on the table, and probably we can invite Ronnie as well for one of the recordings.
Good one.
Okay, what are the plans for the next few recordings after this one? This is the introduction, and then we will move into some other parts of modern management, I think.
Yeah, probably going to the next session is going to be autopilot. So all the steps, what we have to do to get those autopilot. Why do we want to use autopilot? That's a big one, I think. Next one, basic policies, settings catalog, and everything around it. Security baselines, compliancy, conditional access.
Yeah, there will be a complete recording conditional access, I think.
Probably.
That would be really awesome. Yeah.
I think we can ask Kenneth for that.
Probably. Yeah. Shared devices, how you can approach it, kiosk shared, multi-user and everything around it. Update management, applications, our approaches and everything around it, how to do it.
Our best practices that we want to share with them.
Yep.
And then as last? Retirement. So if you have a complete environment, we help you to set up in this series. But in the last recording, we will guide you how you can retire.
I thought
Joost was going to retire already.
Okay. Next year.
Yeah, next year.
Okay, then we will move. Yeah, okay. So let's do that. Thank you, guys. We will invite you again for the next. So we will do that by hour 4, and then hopefully you will listen also to the next one. You enjoyed this one, and we see each other next time. Thank you for this one.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Frans.